Hello, welcome to History 2322. This is World Civilizations since 1500. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez, and I'll be your instructor for this class this semester, this spring semester. All right, so what we're going to be doing in this video presentation is to offer students a class introduction in which the instructor, in this case myself, is going to guide you through the course by reviewing the syllabus, because the syllabus pretty much contains all the information you need to know about this course, all the requirements, how the class is going to be formatted and structured, the method of learning. We're going to be talking about exams as well, how the exams are going to be formatted, and also offer you tips and clues as to how to prepare for those exams, how I grade and the like. We're also going to be talking about extra credit opportunities as well that are open to everyone. And we're also going to talk about the major course assignment that is due at the end of the semester in late April. We're going to be also talking about that. We will be talking about also grade distribution, how I grade and how I calculate grades at the end of the semester. And at the very end, we'll just look at some tentative schedule dates in terms of when the exams are going to be taking place, and also when the major assignment is due and the like. So consider this video presentation as the very first day of class. If you were to be taking this course in person, this is when you meet the instructor, and the instructor pretty much goes over the syllabus and explains everything you need to know about this course. So this video is also going to show you how to navigate the Blackboard page, where to identify the major links for this course, where you can find the historical material that you're supposed to review, the course assignments, where they're located as well, and also where to submit the assignments as well. Okay, so this video presentation, it's very critical. Really, I highly recommend that you review this video presentation as thoroughly as possible, perhaps even take some notes if you can, because this is going to be a very good guidance for learning how to navigate Blackboard and also kind of understand the requirements and the like for this course. All right, so let us now turn our attention to the Blackboard page. You open the Blackboard page and you will see the announcement page. So far, I have not posted any announcement. This is going to be posted the first day of class. Now, due to the winter freeze, ACC closed down on Tuesday, and all online classes were also suspended. So the first announcement that I will be posting and sending to you via email will be posted Wednesday early morning. And that announcement will have to do with this video presentation, just announcing, greeting the class and letting you know that there is a video presentation already located here on Blackboard. As you can see, there's going to be a link at the very top in this left column. You can see it on Blackboard, this menu. Again, the series of links at the very top, there says class introduction. That's where this video is going to be posted. Okay, so I highly, once again, recommend that you watch this video very thoroughly. It's going to span for about an hour or so, but it's very, very useful. Okay, so let us begin then this class introduction with opening up the syllabus page. So the second link in this menu column, you can see here on the left, is titled Syllabus. If you click on it, you will find both the Word doc, if you want to download it and save it in your computer or laptop, etc. Again, you may do so. It's right here, it's available on the very top. But I also made sure to post the entire syllabus on a single page for you to read right away. Okay, so to make it easily accessible, in other words, for you. So let us go over the syllabus. And once again, the syllabus pretty much contains all the information that you need to know regarding this course. And in many cases, when students contact me during the semester, not always, but in many cases, the information they're inquiring about can be located in the syllabus. So let's go over this document, and we start from the top. Again, this is History 2322. This is section 002. This is World Civilizations, second part. And this course starts in 1500. So it's really looking at the last 5 centuries worth of history. Okay, I'm going to actually explain how I decided to structure this course and the topics and themes that were selected for you to review, of course, once we get into the course content section. So, once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this course this spring 2025 semester. And the fastest and easiest way to reach me is via email. I'm checking my email several times a day. And so more than likely, Monday through Friday, you will be receiving a response either the same day that you send the email or within a 24-hour period. Okay, 24-hour period. In other words, if you send it early morning, let us just say Monday, you will be receiving a response from me that day. But if you send it quite late, it will be the following day, and so on. Again, during the weekends, however, I might take 48 hours to respond. Okay, it all depends, again, because we do sometimes have other duties and responsibilities during the weekends, attending conferences or going out of town, etc., and doing research, etc. Again, so it might take 48 hours. So if you send an email, let us just say Saturday, I will respond for sure Monday morning. Okay, so that's my policy. Another policy that is implemented and required by ACC is that regarding communication between faculty and students, all communication between faculty and students have to take place, is required to take place using the ACC supplied systems. Meaning that if you're going to send me an email, asking about a grade, etc., some of the lectures, material, and so on, please use your ACC email account to do so, because if you're using your private email account, I will not respond to it. Okay, so if you're really in need of a prompt response or guidance and so on regarding one of the assignments and such, please use your ACC email account. All right. So, in terms of textbooks, there is one required text for this course, and that textbook is this one right here, as you can see, the one listed there, okay, by Alfred Andrea and James Overfield. Okay, it's called The Human Record, Sources on Global History, Volume 2, since 1500, and it is the 8th edition. If you want to make sure you're getting the right textbook for this course, I have supplied also the ISBN number, which really, by using that one, you will for sure obtain the right textbook in terms of the volume, edition, and the like. Okay? And it is important that you do so because although you might be thinking, well, how much can each edition vary? Let's say the 7th edition from the 8th and so on. How can they vary from one another? And they do vary significantly, particularly in this case that this textbook right here is not a standard conventional textbook in the sense that you're getting, for example, an account, a narrative of historical events that you're reading from cover to cover and is following a specific sequence, but rather, as the title suggests, it is really a collection of primary sources, primary historical sources. And what is really a primary historical source? Well, a primary historical source is something that was generated, produced directly by a historical figure, an important historical figure that, shaped, molded, influenced the course of human history in one way or another. Okay? So you're not reading what an author wrote about them. There's no filter. You're hearing directly their words, their thoughts, their ideas, their views about the world in terms of what they wrote, they pronounced, maybe the philosophical writings they left, some of the teachings they left also to their disciples. You might be reading about specific, for example, legislation emitted by monarchs or kings or parliaments and so on from around the world. You might be also maybe examining a piece of art that was produced by, let us just say, a member of the high court in China and so on. At any rate, you are indeed the historian that is looking at an artifact, that is looking at a source produced by a historical figure, and you are gaining direct knowledge and insight into that production. In other words, okay, without any filter. So it's really a collection of those primary sources, and they're kind of subdivided by different eras, and also those sources are kind of grouped together in terms of region and civilizations as well. And there is like a brief introduction that the authors offer to the sources. So it's not just, the sources are not just compiled and thrown at you, in other words, for you to make sense of, but rather there is a very well elaborate introduction and explanation about what those sources are before you actually get to read them yourself. It's just kind of explaining to the students when those sources were generated, in what particular period of time, and why they are important, and then you get to actually read them. And so it is really combining the best of the two possible worlds, in that this textbook can be read on one hand like a book, kind of, because it has some presentation, if you will, some introduction to the reader about the sources, and on the other hand, you're gaining also knowledge on primary sources as well. And the reason why you will need this textbook for this course is that besides offering a very, let's just say, useful supplemental guide to the lectures, kind of really complement and supplement what the lectures are presenting, this textbook is going to be used for completing a course assignment that is due at the end of the semester. Okay, is due, I think, April 24th. Okay, so you have the entire semester to complete that assignment. What I've done, and I will explain more once we get into that section, is that I've selected a series of primary sources from this textbook, and those are actually excerpts. You're not going to get the entire document, but rather just critical pieces of it for you to read, and you're supposed to read those excerpts and answer a series of questions that I have presented for you. Once again, we will get to that section, in just a few moments, where we explain, this assignment. But this is why you need this textbook. Okay, that's the main reason. And also the extra credit assignments which are not mandatory, those are actually optional, are also going to be based on this textbook as well. Okay, so the extra credit assignments are also based on this textbook. And so this is why it is critical that you obtain this textbook. And I highly recommend that you buy the textbook as soon as you can, because although ACC bookstores offer this textbook, particularly the Highland campus, again, the Highland campus bookstore is the one that carries this textbook. What I've learned in previous semesters is that the bookstores have a policy of returning unsold copies by midpoint during the semester. Assuming that students that did not buy the textbook, let us just say by mid-March, those students either did not need the textbook, they're not going to use it because they maybe dropped the course, or they obtained the textbook somewhere else from another online vendor and the like. And they start returning those unsold copies back to the publisher. So students who wait long enough to buy the textbook because they procrastinate and so on, and they wait until late March and early April to get it, they're really scrambling to get a copy of the textbook because, again, by then the ACC bookstores don't have any, and then they'll have to buy it online. And sometimes it takes about a week to receive it and so on. So again, this is a report or an assignment that, although it's not going to take all of the time from you, it does require that you work slowly, gradually, week by week, slowly but surely. Again, I mean, don't stress over that, but just make sure you receive the textbook as quickly as possible and start working gradually and slowly across the semester to be ready for revision, if you will, by April, and then you submit it by the due date. Okay. All right. So this is the textbook. Once again, that is required. Volume 2, the 8th edition. Earlier editions do not have the same documents. They don't match. So you're going to see that in the instructions, there are documents that if you're getting the 6th, the 5th, or the 7th edition, you're not going to have the same documents listed there. All right, so let us continue. This is an online asynchronous course, which means that it is delivered fully online and there will be no designated class meetings for real-time instruction, the way sometimes is done in hybrid courses and so on, in which there is an asynchronous component, but sometimes there's a synchronous meetings that have to take place each week and so on. Again, nothing of that sort. So again, it is a very flexible course format that allows students to tailor their own schedule based on their own duties and responsibilities, family-wise, on work, and so on. That sometimes is very difficult, again, to kind of schedule some time to go, let us just say, take a class in campus. Now here, you can arrange your own schedule, but as I will explain, despite the fact that you can tailor your own schedule, I highly recommend that you kind of keep a certain rhythm and pace week by week, reviewing the material that is meant for that week, something that I will be announcing. I will be sending announcements. I will be posting them on Blackboard and sending email announcements to you saying, oh, this week, we are covering this topic. Can be, again, a theme. I will be talking about those themes in just a few seconds here. And you have to be watching the lectures, the video lectures that I have recorded for that topic. And so each week there's 2 lectures assigned to students for that particular week. Week by week, there are 2 lectures. I will be notifying you which of those 2 lectures are. And despite the fact that you can schedule when you're going to review those. It's important not to accumulate material week by week, because by the time that the first exam comes along, for example, late February, you're going to end up with a lot of video material to review, and it's going to be really a monumental task to go over all of that information all at once, which I guess some students can do it, but it's not advisable because it's just so much time consuming and very straining, again, just to go over so much material in a few days or several days. All right. So in terms of the course description, this is the section of the syllabus where the student is presented with the actual content of the course, what we're going to cover in general terms. Here you will hear a synthesis of all of the material that we're going to cover. Okay, a condensed version, if you will, of all of the lectures I will present across the semester. Now, this is World Civilizations, the second part, since 1500. And here, it is a course that will offer students a deep understanding of the major civilizations, cultures, societies, and world religions that were shaping human history. Okay, so we're not just going to be focusing on one civilization or just the major civilizations of the world, but rather we're going to take samples of the different civilizations across the planet, which not only include the major, highly organized human societies that really reach that level of sophistication, in which people lived in cities that had well elaborate administrated state systems and bureaucracies, standing armies, for example, that had a very well elaborated economic system and the like, and the system of laws and trade. Those, of course, are the example of the highly advanced civilizations. But we're also going to be paying attention to other types of human societies that are considered by the standards of modern academia what's called traditional societies, in which we see, for example, societies that were still organized around kinship, this idea of extended kin groups, extended family units, if you will, that reach really a high demographic expansion, numbering into tens of thousands of members, if you will, and they also form their own version of a highly advanced society, perhaps in the form of a kingdom in which we see a tribal, if you will, group extending far and wide a geographical area, dominating an entire region and exerting a certain influence in one part of the world. Again, so we have tribal groups that lived in kingdoms, other tribal groups created empires, like the Aztecs, for instance. The tribal groups that formed kingdoms, for instance, were people such as, for example, the Mayas of Mesoamerica or Central America. In Africa, we have the peoples of the Congo, for example, the Kingdom of the Congo. We're going to be looking at that as well. We also look at tribal societies in the Middle East as well, and other parts of the world. So, once again, this is not just going to be looking at the major civilizations like, for example, the Europeans and China and India, for instance, but also we're going to be looking at other kinds of societies, that were smaller in size, if you will, but also played a leading role in shaping human history in different parts of the world. We're also going to be paying attention to world religions as well, because religion was also a driving force shaping human history. And it has been, of course, a driving force since the beginning of humans on Earth. And by certainly the time of, let us just say, the contemporary era, and even before that, the contemporary era, about 2,000 years ago, religion was really now emerging to be not only a regional force, but more so than that, a global force. And we see, particularly after the contemporary era, religions becoming what is today termed world religions. There's a massive, of course, expansion of different faiths across regions that encompass different communities and kingdoms. And we also see the incorporation of certain religions by expanding empires. And with that, of course, religions are going global as well. And certainly by the 1500s of the contemporary era, those religions have become a major force shaping human history as well. And we're going to see that as well in this course. So it's not just going to be the major civilizations. We're also looking at different types of societies, of course, that were also important. And also religions as well, and how they interacted with one another, how they clashed with one another, and what was produced by those encounters and clashes as well. Okay, so in a certain sense, this class is really indeed world civilizations, but it is also a class about global history, because we're trying to look at the entire globe and trying to see how human societies came to structure their social organizations, their political institutions, their cultures, their religions, and how they started really to interact with one another, pretty much since 1500. Now, let me just scroll down here so you gain a sense of how this course was organized and what are going to be the major themes that we're going to examine across the semester. So it is really 500 years of history that we're looking at, compared to, let us just say, world civilizations, the first part, 2321, which looks at global history up to 1500. Again, it's quite different, which I also teach that course. And there is a difference between World Civilization 1 and 2, the way I teach it, in that in the first half of World Civilizations, what I do usually is that I examine a single civilization, okay, and I overview its entire development from its inception and origins to its flourishing and growth and gradual decline, if you will. Okay, I do that starting with Africa, for instance, the origins of humanity. I look at Mesopotamia, I look at Egypt, India, China, Mesoamerica, and then Europe, looking at Rome and Greece. I also look at world religions like Islam and Christianity and the like. And I also look at the nomadic groups, or the so-called barbarians, if you will, that also shaped human history. Here, however, the second part of world civilizations, I've decided to, instead of focusing on a single civilization, to look at each one of them one by one in separate topics or separate themes. What I've decided was to instead look at themes that kind of compare and contrast different civilizations of the world, and at the same time that we draw comparisons between them, we also see the influence of those civilizations with one another. And the reason what I'm doing this kind of formatting and organization, again, in world civilizations, too, since 1500, is because by 1500 of the contemporary era, the civilizations of the globe are no longer isolated, developing, growing, and decaying in splendid isolation from one another, the way they had been kind of doing that in the past. Again, when you look at ancient history, for instance, the civilizations of the globe were very much developing on their own in splendid isolation for the most part. Of course, you can see that certain civilizations had interactions with their neighbors and they were influencing each other, maybe going to war with each other. Yeah, it's true. But for the most part, when you look at all of the civilizations of the world, they were kind of separated in space and time because the transportation and communication systems and technologies of the ancient world and even of the Middle Ages were not very advanced. So it was not possible for humans to be traveling back and forth around the world, exerting influence and pressure on all of the peoples of the world. I mean, it was literally impossible. Roads were not developed. I mean, navigation systems were very, let us just say, limited. And it was not very safe to travel around the world in the ancient world. So there was regional, of course, expansion. When there were empires and so on, there were regional expansions and the like. But to be really talking about global expansion, it was very rare, even by the standards of Alexander the Great, who really created a vast imperial system across Eastern Europe and the Near East, reaching all the way to regions of North India as well. Even that imperial system was quite limited. But as we move into the 12 and 1300s, a new era is really beginning in global history. And we start right here, the very first historical era, an era of change and increasing global interactions from the 14 to the 1600s. What we're looking at here is a new era in which the technologies were really, particularly transportation technologies, were really developing and accelerating very rapidly, allowing for the massive expansion, if you will, of human societies, particularly empires. And with that, we see a process of what is called global interactions, the formative stages of what today we call globalization. Okay, in the different cultures, religions, and civilizations that emerged in the past were for the first time encountering one another. This is an era that today historians call the Age of Encounters, and where people were not only encountering one another, they were establishing more permanent relationships with one another as well. And when people establish more permanent relationships, of course, there is a cultural exchange. Cultures are now spreading around the world, languages, systems of knowledge, belief systems, and the like. And of course, technologies as well. Again, so navigation, particularly technologies, were really developing at an accelerated rate to the point that it was made possible for humans to start really exploring the world around them, sailing around the world, discovering new lands, new continents, and establishing, again, more permanent relationships with peoples that they had absolutely no prior knowledge whatsoever. And again, this is going to be the era that kind of established the basis for a new world. What I called, and other historians, of course, the modern world that is going to emerge by 1500. This is going to be, of course, the second historical era that we're going to examine. So, before we get into the second historical era, the modern world, we are going to examine 3 topics. Again, so the lectures are going to be organized thematically. This is a thematic organization that I have prepared for you to understand global history. And we start, first and foremost, by understanding the pre-modern era. So the pre-modern era really, I mean, if we want to look at time frame, it is really the world that preceded the 1500s, because 1500 is considered to be, give and take, the kind of breaking point that separates the modern world, the world that we live in today, and how it all got started around the 1500s, from the so-called pre-modern world. Okay, people that lived before the 1500s inhabited a totally different world, socially, politically, culturally, technologically, and the like. Okay, and so the very first topic, I call it the many worlds of the pre-modern era, the economic, social, and religious systems, meaning that before we start understanding modernity, the coming of the modern world, starting in 1500s, it is really, really important that you understand how human beings lived before the modern era. What were their economies like? How people went about their economic activity, in other words, how they survived in the world, what kind of subsistence strategies they implemented in order to live and subsist in this world. Okay, how they organize socially as well, what kind of social institutions, how they came together to form a community or a society. It was very, very different from the way we organize today. Again, and also how they thought of the world around them. You know, that's what religion is, how people think about themselves and the universe and the relationship they have with the universe as well. We call that religion. So I take samples from different civilizations so you gain a sense of how people organize economically, let us just say in China, in India, for instance, in the Middle East, in Europe, Africa, and also, let us just say, in Mesoamerica, among, like they say, the Aztecs and the Mayas of Central America. Those civilizations are also assessed in terms of how people lived socially, what kind of communities, what was the organization that they followed, and so on. And also their worldviews, their religious worldviews. So you gain really a sense of how people before the 1500s actually lived economically, socially, and religiously. And then the second topic, long distance trade, climate change, and epidemics in the making of the early modern world, starts looking at the process by which that world, the world as it was prior to modernity, prior to the emergence of the modern world, okay, this very traditional, if you will, ancient way of life is beginning to be disrupted by a series of phenomena that emerged around the 12th, 13 and 1400s. Okay. And those historical forces that began to alter the way people went about working in the world and organizing themselves and their way of looking at life have to do with the emergence of long distance trade. So we see the massive expansion of long distance trade prior to 1500, how human societies began to come together, and kind of exchange commodities and luxury items and the like, artwork, agricultural products, spices and the like. Again, and we see the beginning of long distance trade, and that really created the highways, if you will, by which human societies were beginning to encounter, slowly but surely, other cultures and other civilizations, and there is a wide exchange taking place. Climate change is also going to affect human societies in that this is, again, a cooling cycle that affected the planet around the 1200s and so on, that forced nomadic groups, so-called barbarians, to start invading the sedentary societies around the world. And those invasions, the so-called barbaric invasions, led to the emergence of something new, and that is the barbarians or the nomadic groups like the Vikings, for instance, the Mongols of Northern Asia, the Aztecs of Central America, began to take over the sedentary societies that they encountered, and they started really forging new empires. Again, empires that also fostered the expansion of long distance trade, and long distance trade becomes really the modus operandi, the form of operation, if you will, of the new rising empires in how to increase their wealth, extract tribute and revenues from the conquered populations in order to increase their armies. So we now have war machines, if you will, of course, on the rise. And of course, epidemics. We see also the long distance trade and those empires that were on the rise, altering human societies worldwide, also led to the massive transfer of epidemic disease around the world, and that leads to epidemics like the Black Death, for instance, in the old world, but also with the discovery of America, we see the introduction of new diseases that affected the Native American populations. And we have, of course, also pandemics, of course, shattering really the traditional structures of the past. We see the fall of empires. We see the disintegration of cultures, around the world as a result of epidemics. Okay, so we are looking again at the forces of change and transformation that is leading to the crumbling of this old world that is preparing for the birth of a new world, by 1500. And certainly, again, by 1500 all the way to the 1600s, what we see is now on the rise new forces shaping human history. The new engines, if you will, of change are the political entities that were on the rise, those empires I mentioned that were forged by the takeover of the nomadic / barbaric, if you will, tribal groups that invaded the different civilizations of the world. And what we see is that they were now really dominating global politics, so to speak. We see the rise of trading empires like the Chinese, for instance, the Mughal of India, the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East as well, and the various European empires that started with the Portuguese, followed by the Spanish, then the Dutch, the French, and the British. So we see that the emergence of those empires were critical in the formation of this new world, because what we see is that those empires were really bringing about a new international economic order. Again, it's called mercantilism, in which trade becomes really the main way that not only empires but also merchants and virtually landlords, landowners, peasants were trying to pursue wealth. They were trying to accumulate wealth, silver, gold, and the like. And this is the beginning, again, of people trying to make money. In other words, this really kind of served as the basis for the emergence of capitalism, of world capitalism, if you will. So again, this is something that we examine right there, again, in the third topic. Then we move into the 1500s, from 1500 to 900. Now we're ready to look at the emergence of a totally new world. The old world was shattered. We see the construction of something new, with the emergence of the trading empires. But by 1500, certainly, again, all the way to 1900, what we see is that human beings that lived through those centuries, they were really witnessing the dawn of a whole new world. Okay? We call that modernity, the modern world. Again, modern simply means new. People living through those centuries really believe that, they were indeed, experiencing, witnessing the birth of a totally new world in terms of the economy. Again, this is when capitalism is born. This is an economic system that allowed individuals to accumulate wealth, to build capital. In other words, that this is the goal of human existence. Life on earth, in other words, for humans, is to increase their wealth. And they were pursuing that by engaging not only in international trade, but also in the creation of different kinds of enterprises and businesses and the like. Again, and so this is also a new world in terms of a new science. We see the emergence of a totally new science, what is called modern science, in which people began to look at the here and the now, the world of the senses, and trying to understand the world materially. So this is giving rise to a scientific materialism, if you will. That's what modern science is, studying matter, in other words. Okay. And people were also introducing new philosophical systems in which humans were considered to be at the center of history. It's called humanism. Okay. So there's also a change taking place in which people were breaking away from the old systems of thought in which the gods were at the center of history, determining the affairs of human beings. And now human beings are, starting in 1500s, kind of, introducing new philosophies, placing humans, again, at the very center of everything. Okay. And so to really understand this process, again, of change called modernization, I have organized three more topics. One is called the Age of Revolutions. The Age of Revolutions really discusses all of the revolutions that gave us the modern world. The political revolutions that gave us democracy. We're going to look at that, again, by looking at the English Civil War, the French Revolution, for instance, this idea of popular sovereignty and natural rights, and the Bill of Rights and the like, again, representative government and the like. Again, we also look at philosophical revolutions that gave us humanism, as I explained, the revolutions also that gave us capitalism as well, the economic revolutions that ended feudalism in order to pave the road to a capitalist economy and the like. all of those revolutions are going to be explained, which were really fundamental for the creation of the world that we live in today. Again, it's called the Age of Revolutions. The following topic after the Age of Revolutions is called Colonialism, Old and New. Really discusses the way that, in this case, Europe, which was really at this point in time the focal point for all of the revolutions that were taking place in the world, that were really trying to institute a new civilization, a new society. It's called modernity. Okay, the democratic revolutions were taking place there, capitalism, and so on, humanism. So in this topic, what I've done is that I discuss how Europe, and particularly the trading empires, if you will, in Europe, were bringing about a new order in the world in terms of extending far and wide across the globe in order to dominate other regions around the world, in order to extract vital resources, for instance, and use those resources in order to develop their economies, their capitalist economies, and their massive armies. And what I discuss here is the attempt by the European powers to establish control in different parts of the world, such as India, Southeast Asia, Africa, China. Of course, we do look at the colonialism instituted in the New World. Of course, that is more of the old colonialism, when Europe began to pretty much move into the outside, establishing a series of colonies in the Americas. Again, that kind of served as a preamble, if you will, for a more global type of colonialism that followed after that. And we look after the colonial experience in the New World, how the British, for instance, the French, and the Dutch were beginning to move into, once again, Africa, Southeast Asia, India, and China, and the like. And it was colonialism in terms of trying to extract resources from those societies, but at the same time, the Europeans were trying to export modernity around the world, trying to, in this case, shape the cultures of other societies and trying to introduce European ideas, again, around the world. And we experienced, again, that kind of process from the 15th to the 1900s. Again, this is an ongoing process by which Europe was leading the way in trying to shape other cultures and transform them. They saw themselves as historical agents in order, trying to kind of, change the civilizations of the world and to make them look more like Europe. Okay. Now, we're also going to look at modernization. In this case, the attempt by non-Western societies to kind of push their societies forward in this path of modernity. Meaning that there were societies, particularly, let us just say, Latin America, China, for instance, that although they were heavily impacted by the presence of Europeans, that they themselves believed that that project, the European project of modernization, trying to create a capitalist economy, for instance, trying to create material progress through the creation of enterprises and industries such as mining and factories and the like, trying to create a middle class and trying to create, a representative government and the like, introduce modern science and technology, all of that, which were really considered progress, signs of progress, were implemented in different regions of the world. They were trying to rapidly transform their traditional societies into modern societies. And we're going to see the efforts, again, implemented in Latin America, China, but also within Europe. Russia, again, was one of those really highly traditional societies that was trying to speed up their process of change as well. And again, we're going to examine that very closely. Last but not least, our course is going to examine the last century or so worth of history, in which the world is really kind of moving from modernity to globalization. And in reality, what globalization is, it is trying to globalize modernity. In other words, that this model that got started in Europe, it's called modernity, with the rise of capitalism, humanism, representative democracy or representative government, and the like, that model, including its scientific systems, modern science, modern technology, and the like, that particular model is going global. Again, that is being implemented around the world on a global scale. Again, and so we're going to examine this process, this transition in this last century or so, in which we're moving rapidly towards a globalized civilization that is really modernizing every corner of the world. Whether we're looking at the Aborigines of Australia or in, indigenous societies in South America or in Africa and so on, it is now inescapable that the world is becoming more and more globalized. And of course, that is really the influence of the new technologies, transportation technologies, the airplane, for instance, telecommunications, internet, cell phones, satellites, the World Wide Web, and so on. Again, so due to the new technologies in transportation and communication, the globe, humanity is really becoming more and more interconnected. So in this last segment, in this last part of the semester, we look at three more topics, and that is, one is going to be world revolutions. Okay, so world revolutions looks at, first and foremost, at the reaction, if you will, of certain traditional societies that were on the path of modernization. And they were entering globalization at the same time. But the series of disruptions that were caused by modernity pushed those societies towards the path of revolution. And again, we're going to examine, for example, the Mexican Revolution, the Russian, and the Chinese, which were really symptoms of societies heavily disrupted and, in a certain sense, rejecting many of the aspects of modernity. Again, so there's going to be a clash, if you will, between traditional societies and modern societies. Again, world wars and decolonization looks at the process by which the main imperial powers that had established colonial territories and possessions around the world competed with one another in two world wars, and the crumbling of the European imperial order led to, at the same time, the decolonization of the globe as well, meaning that societies that were colonized by Europe are now entering the process of decolonization, moving into independence, nationhood, and we're going to see that process, again, by looking at different areas of the globe that were moving in that direction. The Middle East was one, Africa was another region, China, of course, Asia was another region, and the like. We're going to look at different areas. Last but not least, we are going to look at globalization and its many worlds, meaning that indeed the world was moving towards a more kind of standard, if you will, version of modernity. the United States, as I will explain, was really becoming one of the major players internationally in trying to export the major principles, ideas, and values of modernity around the world, particularly after the Second World War. But this is a process that got started very early on in the late 19th century. Again, the so-called American mission, that the United States was really trying to pretty much shape, if you will, the course of human history. But in doing so, we're going to see different areas of the world that were indeed kind of creating their own unique model of society, that were rejecting, of course, the American model, and instead kind of trying to implement a different variation of modernity. So again, the world is not really coming together, if you will, under a single modern model of living, an economic model or social model, but rather there are different areas of the world that are kind of going in their own way, trying to create their own version. So I have kind of synthesized, pretty much what we're going to be covering across the semester, the major themes, how we're going to organize all of this material. Now, the question here is, okay, so you're going to receive 2 lectures per week. The lectures, of course, are located here on Blackboard under course content. When you click on it, it says instructional materials. There are 2 folders, the recorded video lectures. It contains 9 folders. Those are the 9 topics. Each folder contains 3 videos. Okay, and so you watch 2 videos per week, and I will be indicating to you which videos you're supposed to be watching. You take notes and then use that information to answer the questions of the exam. The second folder is called Lecture Outlines and Questions. And that folder has the specific lecture outlines that I'm actually showing you while I'm lecturing. That's just for your information. Again, those are not the notes. Those are not the lecture notes. But it's just, again, the important bullet points and so on that you have to kind of keep in mind. Okay? Now, in terms of the exams, there will be 3 exams. Every time we cover 3 topics, we have an exam. So there are 3. And the way they're going to be formatted, if we can just go back, for example, and click here, first exam, is that those are not going to be timed exercises. They're not going to be taking place on a specific time and day. But rather, this is more like a writing assignment, and you have about 5 weeks to complete each exam. Okay? So the first exam is due February the 27th, and it entails selecting for part 1, it has 2 parts, part 1 for 70 points, you select 1 topic out of 2. So you select either the topic number 2 or 3, you watch the lectures of that topic very thoroughly, and you answer the questions as fully as possible. Again, I'm really looking at extended responses as opposed to the kind of like the simple answers. Okay, so try to go the extra mile, try to be elaborate, try to provide details and examples and the like as you are answering those questions one by one. So this is not really an essay necessarily, but rather it's a question and answer kind of exercise. And they're based exclusively on the lectures. So you don't need to worry about anything else but the lectures. Okay, so don't follow any other readings, don't use any outside sources, like web pages or books, etc. Just watch the lectures and answer the questions. Part 2 for 30 points, it tells you to review the first topic. So everybody is required to review the first topic, okay, the many worlds of the pre-modern era. So you review that, and then I've selected 6 issues from that topic, and you pick 3 of those key terms or key themes, and you explain them as fully as possible. So this is not just a definition. This is an extended response. Okay, so you have to respond as fully as possible. It's not more of an extended, if you will, answer, other than just, 2 or 3 sentences, etc. Again, so it's more like a long paragraph in which you really explain very, very fully what those terms are. Okay? And that's for 30 points. So once again, 2 parts. Part 1, you select one topic and answer it fully. And part 2, you have to watch the first topic and pick 3 key terms and answer them as fully as possible. Okay. And again, the condition here is that although this is a kind of take-home exercise, the condition here is that you must use the lecture material to answer part 1 and part 2. Because if I start reading information that I did not lecture, and I repeat, if I start reading outside sources, something you gather from any other source, okay, might be online or a book or an article, etc., other material, etc., your work will be disqualified. So this is very, very important that, if you want to pass this class and avoid all kinds of hassles, etc., just pay attention to the lectures, take notes, use that information to answer the questions and the terms, and you'll be in good shape. Otherwise, if you decide to, maybe I don't have time, etc., to watch the material, and you decide to use outside sources, again, you have to know in advance that doing so is going to disqualify your work, and you're going to have to do it again. So it's double work. You're still spending time trying to create a document, even if you're just, drawing material from different sources, etc., you're still spending time doing that. So why not just, review the material for this class and do it once instead of twice? You just do it once, you get a good grade and move on. Again, and you'll be in good standing, of course. Okay, so and also avoid, transcriptions. I don't want a transcription. What some students do is that they transcribe all of my notes, and sometimes they use certain software and they just submit it. That is not going to work either. I mean, those transcriptions don't earn grades because that's not, something that a student wrote. This is not the production of the student, in other words, okay? There will be 3 extra credit assignments based on the textbook. I've selected some documents there. Everybody's entitled to do those extra credit assignments. They add 10 points to each exam grade. Okay, so it's a wonderful opportunity, again, to earn points. You have until April 28th. This is just a technical information to drop the course without grade. After that, you will be receiving whatever grade you got. Okay, so just letting you know. Now, as I mentioned, there will be one major course assignment due at the end of the course based on this textbook. I've selected a series of documents from different regions of the world for you to read and answer some questions. It's a very simple exercise, by the way. Looks at the Americas. There are some documents there from the Americas, from Africa, from India, from China, the Middle East, for instance. And your responsibility is to read those documents. It tells you the chapter and so on, the page number, the title. And the way you proceed with this report is by you start with writing the title, for example, the Americas, and then write the name of the document, like Bernardino de Sahagún, General History of the Things of New Spain, and so on. And then write the question, and then the answer, question and answer, and then when you move to the other document, you write the title of the document again, and then proceed with the question and answer. So again, write title, like the Americas or Africa and so on, the region, and then write the title of the document, and then question and answer. At the end of the report, you must end up with 10-page report, double spaced, of course. You save it on Word or PDF and submit it by April 24th on Blackboard, which, by the way, this is the section which says submit work. This is the section where you have to submit all of the documents. First exam, second exam, final exam, the study questions report, and of course the extra credits are totally optional. Where do you find the extra credits? Here under course assignments. The title, again, course assignments kind of gives it away. All the course assignments are listed here. First, second, final exam, study questions report, and the extra credit assignments is a folder. It has 3 assignments for you, and that's the only one that is optional. It's non-mandatory, the extra credit assignments. Okay? So at the very end of the document, we look at grading. You know, there are 4 major components. First, second, final exam, and a study questions report is 25% each of the final grade. Now, consider you have extra credit assignments. You add points. And also, if I see that you were progressing in your grades from the first, second, and final exam, you were moving upward, and you submitted 1 extra credit assignment, and you ended up short of getting, let's say, the A, 88.75, I'll take into account progress and effort as part of the grading. Again, I'll give you a push just because you were really trying, you were improving, and you showed effort as well. So again, your grades are not set in stone. There's a lot of room for improvement, and actually, earning a good grade in this course. At the end, it tells you when the tentative course schedule dates are timed. The first exam is February the 27th. It tells you week by week which themes we're going to be covering. And then for part 2, week by week, it tells you the themes, and then when the second exam is scheduled, April the 10th. And then the last section, it tells you that the report is due April 24th, and our final is scheduled for May the 15th. Okay? So I think it's a very straightforward class. It's very well organized, very structured. All you have to concentrate here to pass this course is the lectures. You don't need to worry about anything else. You don't need to be following readings in order to, answer the exam. All the exams are based exclusively on the lectures. So just know that, pay attention to that, and you'll be in good standing. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Send me an email and I'll respond as soon as possible. I hope this video presentation really helped you identify the major components of this course and where to locate all of the materials on Blackboard. Okay? Once again, my name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this World Civilizations Since 1500 course this semester. And I'll see you then soon as I send you the class introduction video, and I'll send you also the email announcement for the very first video lecture for this week. Okay, so we do start the first lecture on Thursday. Wednesday, you'll be receiving this class introductory video. Please review it as thoroughly as possible. Again, getting the textbook as quickly as possible is a must. I highly recommend it that you buy it and don't wait until the very end. A lot of students experience a lot of difficulties getting this textbook quite late. And just remember, the lectures, again, is really the critical component for this course. Okay, so please make some time and space week by week to be watching those 2 lectures on a weekly basis. And really, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, that's all I have for you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.